Danielle Sellick, the best therapist in the universe. Welcome to the Happy You podcast.
Oh, Joe, what a welcome. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here.
Fantastic. And thank you, Danielle. I'm so appreciate not only for your personal help, but for what you do out in the world, because I know it's such a huge help to so many people. And this process of therapy is just so vital to so many of us, just in doing well in life, but it's also so important to talk about, because finding the right person and the right process for you, it isn't easy either. So that's why I'm so excited to have you on today to talk about really demystifying the whole process of
Wonderful.
therapy.
Wonderful. That's why I'm here and very happy to be talking about this topic. I think you're right, Joe. It needs to be talked about and we can do this. So yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and here I am. My name is Joe Bakhmutsky, and on this show we talk about healing from trauma. And I've got an incredible person, Danielle Sellick, who is an expert in this field, talking about it right now. So, Danielle, first of all, I just want to ask you, why is therapy even important?
Oh, there's so many reasons. I have this quote that comes to mind when someone asks me that, and it's by a guy called James Baldwin, and it's that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I just love that quote. To me, that means, we need to turn towards the dark stuff, our shadows, our challenges, in order to cast some light on them. And I think it's important fundamentally because you don't have to go through difficult times alone. Connection is key, and it's our absolute superpower as humans, and it's an important part of anyone's healing journey. And the idea that therapy can actually help to heal trauma and make it go away, Joe. We talked about this. It can normalize who we are as people, and it can teach us how to have closer relationships, and accept ourselves. And you know what? It actually keeps a lot of people alive too. So that's why therapy is so important.
I so love it, Danielle, and you hit on all the right notes. And I think that even I'm glad you mentioned the possibility of healing, because so many of us go through life after experiencing trauma, just thinking that, that you're broken, thinking that things are the way they are and nothing can be changed. And yet there's an opportunity to heal. So Danielle, if you're someone who's, experienced hardship, how do you know that, you're ready for therapy? And how do you know, how do you go about finding who might be the right person to support you on that journey?
Yeah, they're great questions. Joe, I think we all experience hardship, some are greater than others, but to be human is to experience heartache, we've all been there. And therapy is useful at any time if you want to learn something new and genuine about yourself on that road. However, I find it particularly useful when you're stuck. You've tried the self-help books and it's not working the way you'd hoped. And I'd say, no one feels fully ready for therapy. Don't wait until you feel fully ready to make that phone call, because that day will probably not come. We all feel scared when we make that call, but don't let fear get in the way of growth is what I'd say. There's some practical signs too that you're ready for therapy. Things like, you're willing to show up for regular appointments. That's a good one. And that's gotten easier with telehealth, recently. You can do your appointments from your home, from the office, from the car, from the park, wherever. And also, I'd say another important thing is when you know that there's kind of no quick fixes. I think often people do hope to come in and have a quick fix, 3 sessions and I'm done. It doesn't work like that. And, the idea is you need to bring your thoughts and feelings into the therapy room and learn to trust the process. And if you're willing to do that, and you're willing to start thinking a bit differently about things, and you're open to change, then, you know, they're all big green lights that you're ready to go. There's actually a really good book that I recommend to my clients called How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LaPera. How to Do the Work. I recommend it to support anybody's therapy journey. And I think the second part of your question was who might be the best person to help you. Look, a good way to start is actually talking to your GP about what's going on for you. They're often a good starting point, and they'll refer you to an appropriate person. And you know what? If that person is not the right fit, it's okay. You try again, you know. And use your intuition. Don't forget about that. That's important, you know. And ask yourself when you're meeting your therapist, and give it a little bit of time, but ask yourself, is this someone I can work with? And at the end of the day, look, it does help if you like the person and you think they've got the capacity to understand you.
Yes, so true, Danielle. And I love how you mentioned the fact that, you know, you want to be you can never really be truly ready to start therapy. So it's about, like you say, finding that place where you feel stuck, like you want to take that next step. And even if you don't know what that looks like, you can try to kind of go out and seek that support. And thank you for the book recommendation. I'm going to check it out, obviously, as well. And I think it's really powerful that you touched on the fact that, you know, if you don't find the right person who works for right away, you can try again, right? Because I mean, so many of us, and I think I've told you before about my first kind of touch point, that wasn't that great. Like, we don't, like, so many of us don't have maybe that first good interaction with, whether that's a doctor, whether that's a counselor, whether that's some kind of mental health specialist, for whatever reason. And maybe this just wasn't the right time or the right person or the right approach. And it's so important to keep in mind, you know what, we can go out and try to find the person who is going to be right for you, who's going to help you heal. Because it's not about fixing you, as you were saying. It's not about like just having something that is a quick fix. It's about finding someone who's going to help you and support you on the journey towards healing. By the way, Danielle, do you like this metaphor of a journey?
I do. Well, it is a journey. I like it. Absolutely. You know, it's a winding path that we're all on. And, you know, you can always, if you're willing to have that growth mindset and you're open and you're curious about yourself and the world, you can always learn something in that therapy space and on that therapy journey.
Absolutely. And I really love this metaphor of journey as well. And I really love the fact that the journey implies, to me, Danielle, is that you don't have to be perfect. Like, things can go like kind of up and down or sideways a little bit. And it's okay that, you know, because none of us is perfect, and you can find your own way through life to feel happy about life in a way that works for you.
Exactly. You know, you're entirely unique. We are all entirely unique, having these different parallel journeys, aren't we? And sometimes, you know, they're crazy. You know, it can get really chaotic. And other times, you know, it's like a river. It's a gentle flowing stream, and you feel like you're in the flow, and, you know, things are going pretty well. You're feeling good. So yes, it's just about you know, trying to stay with that journey and connect with as many like-minded people as you can, because, you know, we're all in this together, really.
Exactly. And I love this mindset because, yes, we are all in this together, you know, and I think when we say us, it's everyone who suffered, whether that's, you know, the people who go through it, whether this is your loved ones, whether this is people who support you in your mental health. And that journey, also going on a journey through therapy as well. Like, I think there's just these myths and misconceptions that still exist, I think, in our culture, Danielle, about, you know, that unfortunately get in the way of people getting the support or seeking help in kind of this mental health space. So what are some of the things that you've seen come up in terms of misconceptions that
Yeah.
get in the way for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, the first one that comes to mind is that idea that, you should wait until you're really unwell before you see somebody. The opposite is true. Don't wait until, your mild depressive symptoms or your mild anxiety symptoms are worsening. Get help early. Treatment outcomes are better. The other thing I'd say is there's a lot of concerns out there at the moment that it's too expensive and it's hard to find someone who has space. Yeah, you would have heard about that, Joe. And it is true that 1 in 3 psychologists, they're at capacity right now. They're not taking new clients. That still leaves a lot of psychologists who have, open books where they can take on new clients. And also, I know the government recently announced, I think it was about 90 million over a number of years to increase the psychology workforce. And that's a good start, right? That's a good start. We've also got a very talented and diversified mental health workforce in this country, and we're lucky. And they include people like mental health social workers. They include mental health nurses, counsellors, psychiatrists, occupational therapists, and others. So that's important to know too. I guess the big misconception is the stigma around seeking help, that you might be seen as weak if you're seeing someone, if you're talking to someone about your problems. I reckon that's changed a lot in the last 20 years, and I'm grateful for that. Organisations like Beyond Blue, they've helped with destigmatising mental illness. And, really it's the opposite. Your vulnerability is your strength. It means that you're actually taking responsibility for how you show up in the world, and the world absolutely needs this, right? It's chaotic. Like I said before, the world's a chaotic place, and we all need to continue to build our emotional muscles to live with it. That's my belief.
Totally. And it's like, I don't know, it's like, I'm glad that you mentioned that it's like the stigma. I kind of, it's like if there's been a storm and there's been like just this leaking through your roof and this rain that comes in, you're not going to be sitting there going, you know what, if I call like a plumber, like I'm going to look stupid. Like we don't do that.
Yes.
So why is it that we have this thing about, getting help and support when you need it for your mental health? We want to be able to be in a position, I need support in this right now. Here is the type of person that can help me. Let me go and do that. Because it's for me.
Absolutely. And Joe, I've talked about this openly with you. When I did my EMDR therapy training to become an EMDR therapist, I went and sought out an EMDR therapist. So I've been the client, right?
Yeah.
And not every therapist does this, but many do. Okay. And in our EMDR training, we're encouraged to seek out our own therapy, just like when you first train. And when you train in EMDR, we practice on each other, even with our trauma memories that are not too distressing. And we see the benefits of our clients that our clients get, and we think, geez, I've got some old memories that are still a bit uncomfortable for me. I think I'm going to go get some EMDR therapy to work on this. So absolutely, I'm all over that.
Fantastic, Danielle. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, you yourself and many therapists do go through the experience of being on kind of the other end of therapy.
Absolutely.
Because you know what it's like. You kind of step into the person's shoes, so you really get to feel their experience and, and kind of adjust as the way that you do things.
I think it's a very important part of being a therapist. I think we must know what it feels like to be the client. And I really enjoyed my therapy, which was a bonus. And it definitely has made me a better therapist.
Fantastic, Danielle. And so speaking of EMDR, Danielle, please give us a breakdown. Like if you're someone who doesn't know the first thing about EMDR, like what is it and why is it a big deal?
Yeah. Joe, do you know EMDR? To talk about EMDR, I feel like I need to talk a little bit about trauma. Is that okay if I just
Absolutely.
chat a little bit about that for a minute?
Totally.
And it might get a bit technical.
Love it.
So
We love it technical,
put your
Danielle.
seatbelt on, okay?
Yep.
Um, so there's two therapies that I've trained in that I use the most, and EMDR therapy is one of those therapies, and they're both trauma focused therapies. Okay, so they work with trauma, they work at healing it. So first, a little bit about trauma. So our brain has this natural or innate capacity to process information, right, in a really adaptive way. So new experiences and information are integrated and connected to related information that's already stored in our memories, in our memory networks. And that's what allows us to make sense of our experiences on a daily basis. So what's useful is learned and stored in our memory networks with emotions attached, and then it's made available to guide us as we go through our daily lives and in the future, okay? Trauma causes a disruption to the brain's natural processing system, okay? It gets overwhelmed, and often due to a more challenging emotion like anger or shame or fear and a negative belief about ourselves, like, I am weak, the memories get stored differently in these isolated memory networks in our brain, and they get triggered when a reminder comes along, okay? Is that making sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful explanation of how things work.
Good. So we go about our daily lives and we make these new memories, and these memories are encoded primarily on the left side of the brain and in the hippocampus in our brainstem at the back, okay? The trauma memory is encoded primarily on the right side of the brain as sensory memories, so what we could smell, hear, taste, touch, feel, and in the amygdala. Now, you probably have heard of the amygdala before. Our fight, flight, freeze response is controlled by our amygdala. So it keeps us safe by alerting us to danger. However, if we are triggered by something or someone, we may well be safe right now in the present, but we don't feel it. Yeah. So there's been a bit of talk about trauma and triggers at the moment. Trauma is a bit of a buzzword, I feel, right now, and it's good that we all understand what we're talking about when we talk about it. The good news about trauma is there is actually several therapies that treat trauma. And so, eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy, EMDR therapy, is one of those. So this is an interesting therapy, Joe. It was developed in 1987 by a lovely American lady called Francine Shapiro. And it's one of those evidence-based therapies recommended by the World Health Organization, and also Phoenix Australia, for treating adults with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? And it actually uses eye movements which cause a process to occur which unlocks that trauma memory held in the brain, usually on the right side. And then it helps to kickstart the natural ability of the brain to process information or reprocess the information in a healthy way, working on that trauma memory as it does. So there's 8 phases to EMDR therapy. The first one is the history taking. And then there's preparation and a stage that we call resourcing, so getting the client ready to do the EMDR therapy. And then we find target memories. We go after the juicy targets, of the tricky things that have happened. And then there's a phase called desensitization, which is where the eye movements are involved. And then there's a phase called installation, where we're installing a positive belief, a more positive or neutral belief about what happened around the trauma. And then we do a body scan and some closure and checking in when we have a new session or the next session. So it looks at past memories, present triggers, and future coping strategies. There's a past, present, and future element to EMDR therapy. Did that make sense?
Totally. I love that you described it in such an elegant way, Danielle. So tell me what happens in the brain as you are going through these 8 stages and you get through that process of, I think what you described as desensitization of memories. I think I scrambled that one, but you know what I mean. What happens in the brain to those traumatic memories?
Well, actually, the memories, they move and they move away from being floating around your brain and getting triggered when reminders come along to being stored in our short-term and long-term memory store like other memories. So they move from those isolated memory networks into a more adaptive memory network for the brain. And there's more integration. You might have heard of this term. So integration is neural pathways across the left and right side of the brain. And a healthy brain has lots of integration in it. And so EMDR therapy helps to create these neural pathways that move across the left and right side of the brain.
Yeah, that's just so crazy, Danielle, because and I remember like going through this process with you. I remember like that's that part of the memory, it almost gets to a place, or at least it did so for me, where I almost had trouble recalling the memory itself. Like, how does it work?
Yeah, that's called distancing, Joe, because the memory gets filed away. It's like a filing cabinet. It gets put in its normal place. That's why we call it the adaptive information processing model that the EMDR is based on. The brain knows what to do when it's not dealing with a trauma memory, and we just kickstart that natural process. So that memory gets filed away, and it doesn't bother us so much, like all the other neutral or happy memories we've got of our lives. And I had the same experience, Joe, when I did EMDR therapy. I experienced that distancing and that sense of, it just didn't bug me as much, the memory. It didn't bother me. It just became a memory.
As it should be, Danielle. And you mentioned also the second approach that you use in your practice. Can you talk to that as well? And how maybe whether that even relates to EMDR?
Relates to EMDR. EMDR therapy works really well as a therapy that integrates with other modalities. And the other therapy that I use it with mostly in my practice is called ego state therapy, which again it's based on the premise that every human has parts to themselves, like their adult self now, like you and I talking to each other, and other parts. Like you can think of the silly 5-year-old part inside you that likes to dance, and just let their hair down. Or the cranky adolescent that likes to rebel against things, or maybe, that professional part that shows up at work. So what actually happens is sometimes those younger parts of ourselves like to take over when it's not helpful, and often when we're not conscious of that process happening. And those younger parts often hold the memories of what happened at a time when we were younger. Yeah. So they can be involved and brought into the process of healing from trauma. Another way to explain it is that, for every age and learning situation, we develop neural pathways in our brain. And we've got them for right now and for all ages in our past. And sometimes those old pathways arise or get triggered, and we feel and do things that belong to the past, when the more current ones might, they might work better for us. So the EMDR therapy and ego state therapy, the work gives us a way to connect the right now parts of our brain with the back then parts of our brain, if you will, so that you can consciously choose the next best choice for what now. And the most important thing about it, Joe, and this is what I love about it, is that it can help clients build a sense of themselves as adult, as lovable, as worthwhile, and, as competent.
Yeah, that's I love the two different ways or two different perspectives that you gave on that process. And, like the idea that we have parts, I think it's just such a phenomenal idea, because it almost sounds a little weird, doesn't it? Like that we have parts, because it's gonna go, wait a second, does it mean that I'm like, is this something that this is something that we should embrace, right? Because it sounds a little bit weird.
Yeah, okay. I think I've been doing it for so long that it doesn't sound weird to me anymore. I just love it. Yeah, it's something we should absolutely embrace. You know, these parts are connected to states. We have this where we use in psychology called states. It's, you know, it's often connected to a feeling that we felt at a time when we were younger. And why wouldn't we have all of that inside of us? You know, this is, as you said, it's a journey, right? Like life and the trauma road and growing and healing, it's all a journey, and we carry those parts with us on the journey as we go, no matter how old we are.
Yes, absolutely. And so these parts then become something that we can, as you say, embrace, but also we're helping to, and again, I'll use the word you've been using, we help to integrate them into the way that we live our daily life. And like I haven't seen that experience or haven't experienced it for myself. I think it was one thing that I did not expect, Danielle, is that it was a very emotional experience. Because when I've heard it, I've read about it, and to me it sounded a bit kind of woo-woo, but going through it is a tremendously, like, it's a really like emotional experience. Like I had tears in my eyes. Like it's fun. Like, tell me, how does it work?
Because, you know, the body doesn't know the difference. You know, when a younger part of ourselves gets activated, you know, or gets triggered, our body doesn't know the difference between now and then. We feel all those emotions that we felt, you know, when we were 5 or 12 or whatever it might be. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a powerful thing. And yes, often people are taken aback by how emotional it is, because this is the beauty of therapy, right? You can have these great cathartic moments doing these doing these therapies. And there's not just 2 trauma therapies, Joe. There's others, you know, and there's many other beautiful therapies that our mental health professionals use to help I guess kickstart the healing journey.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the fact that there is different approaches, even apart from those two, because I think sometimes we have this stereotype, or at least I know I did, that going to the therapist is like this cliche you see in the movies where, you know, you're lying on your couch and on your back, and the therapist says, "So tell me about your mother," and it's nothing like the experience that happens can happen in real life, right?
Yeah, look, some therapists do have a couch. I actually do have a couch in my room, but not that many people lie down on it. We've got
I'll
lots
do
of
that next time, Danielle.
Yeah, you can. Lots of comfy chairs. And yes, that old idea, that Freudian idea of, you know, the psychoanalysis where you don't even look at the therapist, you know, and the therapist is required to be that mirror, just to reflect back whatever you're thinking and feeling in a very neutral way. No, there's many therapies that are far more active, like, you know, EMDR therapy and ego state therapy, and lots of others that we know work. They're evidence-based, and that's why we use them. And it's really it's a partnership, isn't it, Joe? Don't you think?
Well,
The therapy
100%.
journey.
100%. It's a partnership, and I would also say it's a creative partnership, because it's not something that
Yes.
is done to you, but it's something that is done with you. So you are in essence creating something together. So no couch, Danielle. But what I guess, oh no, you do have a couch, so that's always an option. But I mean, in general, like I think, what sort of expectations we talked about? You gave us some great ideas about, you know, what are some of the things that will help you to decide to try therapy if you're kind of on the fence. But what sort of expectations, like, would you believe are kind of helpful, right, when you are considering therapy?
Mm. Well, I think, you know, first of all, think about what's most important for you to work on now. That's perhaps not an expectation, but that's something important to reflect on. when you're making that first appointment, and, what do you want to change or improve? And if you're not sure, be prepared to work on gaining some clarity around that early in the process with the therapist.
Yeah.
Have a think about anything you don't want to discuss, at least initially too. I think also think about the type of therapy you're after. If you have an interest in a particular type, then you can seek out that therapist who has that training, and think about what you might need the therapy for. Is it addiction? Is it eating disorders? Is it couples therapy that you might need? So we were talking about looking to find the right fit, and that can help with expectations if you do find the right fit early on. I think most importantly, it helps to be persistent and patient, and stay the course as you work on your issues and you gain awareness of your strengths and problems on the journey. And your therapist is not there to fix things, as you mentioned before, Joe. It's a partnership, and you will learn something genuine about yourself on the journey, but you got to do the work.
Yes, 100%. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the word clarity, because that's what we get sometimes when I think with therapy is such a beautiful experience, is sometimes you go through life and you experience things and you don't get to almost step outside of yourself and look at kind of the whole perspective of what's really going on, and being able to see that big picture, but also then potentially zoom in or zoom out at points, gives you an ability to go, this is my story. Like, this is what I've experienced. For me, it was like, no wonder I felt so messed up at different parts of my life, because look at all the stuff that I didn't even know that was there, right? Like, you have to see things for what they are.
Mm-hmm. And you get a bit of that bird's eye view, don't you? I think, because we're in our own heads and in our own, bodysuits walking around on the earth. But often we don't get that chance and have that space to reflect and get a bit more objectivity and get a storyline, get a narrative about, oh, geez, this is the road I've walked. These are the experiences that I've had that have shaped who I am and how I show up in the world today. And no wonder I feel this in different situations.
Yeah, because I remember we were doing, I think, a trauma map at one point. And at first I was like almost reluctant, because I was thinking, I kind of know, I'm here because of this. But we started to go through it, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on in here, Joe. So it's like I said, it's that clarity that comes in. And there's obviously, it's the healing is such a well, that's why we're there. That's why we're there, to heal. And I know this is something that doesn't often get talked about, or at least I feel it doesn't get talked about, is the healing process and what it brings into your life. Because oftentimes we talk about, I guess some of the more common things, like be more calm, but there's also like it's a transformative experience that brings so many beautiful things into our lives when we are healing from trauma. Like, Danielle, when you look at healing from trauma through therapy, like, you've seen a lot of people, you've done it through your own experience. Like, what are the things that maybe don't get enough attention in terms of the outcomes or the positive states, or the things that can help us to feel better about ourselves moving forward?
I think one of the most beautiful gifts of trauma therapy is we can actually connect these more positive thoughts we have about ourselves, like, I'm important, I matter, I'm enough, whatever the positive thought is, I'm strong, maybe. You connect it with a feeling in your body which wasn't there before. You actually embody it, you feel it. So you're thinking it and you're feeling it and you're feeling it in your body. And then when you have that superpower, then you're able to go out into the world from that place of self-acceptance and more compassion, more self-love, and give that to the world, you know, and it expresses itself in so many beautiful ways, and it has a ripple effect for generations to come. That's my favorite thing about trauma, Joe. You know, it stops the rot. And we know that often it takes generations for people to overcome a traumatic event that has occurred, generations, you know. However, with trauma therapy, we can get in there and we can actually make a huge difference, you know, not just for your children, but your children's children.
And that's a beautiful way to think about it, that it not only helps you, but it helps your family. It helps. It's essentially it's doing therapy to heal from trauma is essentially a way to serve your family, your loved ones, your community, because you say you're stopping the rot.
Absolutely. And you know, there's this term called self-actualization. Have you heard of that, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the royal road or royal path to self-actualization. I think we often need to clear our trauma load to be able to walk that journey of not only feeling good about ourselves, having connection to others, but actually, you know, dare I say it, finding what you're here for.
Yeah.
You know, and getting in that flow of thinking, yeah, you know, I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing, and I'm feeling good about myself being in the world. I think it gets us closer to that. That's just been my experience of it.
100%, Danielle. And because it gets us to a place where we're feeling more whole, we're feeling more connected to ourselves, we're feeling more connected to our experience. And that's the beauty of life that we want to experience. Danielle, thank you so much for being here. Any last resources or last words you want to throw at us?
Oh, look, you know, I think hope is key. If I haven't already said it today, you know, that would be my final note. Be hopeful. I always think of my dad's favorite saying, you know, that it's always darkest before the dawn. And in my many years of being a therapist, I have found that to be true. So I just want everybody out there to be hopeful, and I wish them well.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for finishing in the spirit of hope. Thank you for what you do in the world.
Thank you, Joe.